There is a dimension located 47,000 light years from the Mandalorian effect, beyond the reach of logic and feedback, where sanity fucks off and is replaced by farts, food preparation, and a slappable old hag. It exists in a cul-de-sac between bad LSD trips, fever dreams, and the spectral apparition of Margaret Thatcher, just down the street and around the corner of pretentiousness and copyrighted music. A dimension not only full of asses and horny people of questionable ages, but of cat-stretching, badly animated gifs, and a whiny shall-be king. It is best described as a click-on-stuff-and-things-happen kids' educational game that lost its mind and ended up as a heavy drug addict. This is an experience that will test your wits and your sanity in equal measure. This is a fair and balanced retrospective of a so-called game which we call Blue Ice.
Hi, I'm the Space Quest historian. One of the things that seem to turn people off from adventure games is that they have a reputation for occasionally being a bit on the obtuse side. You know what I'm talking about. Sometimes you come across these puzzles where you get stuck, you have no idea how to progress, you spend ages going back and forth trying everything you can think of to make the game progress until finally you cave and look up a walkthrough for the solution, and then you go, well, how the fuck was I supposed to guess that? Because it turns out the solution to the puzzle makes no goddamn sense. There's a term for that among adventure game fans. We call it moon logic, and it is rightfully so considered to be a cardinal sin of adventure game design these days. But you try telling that to the designers of Blue Ice, a game developed by Art of Mine Productions and released by Psygnosis in 1995. Now, my boxed copy says 1996, but every source online says 1995, and yes, I have a boxed copy of this game, and you want to know why? It's because for the longest time, I refused to believe that this game was even real, and certainly not one that ever got released by a respectable software publisher, and absolutely not one that actually got a fucking physical release. And that's because this game is by far the most impenetrable, baffling, bewildering, torturously difficult, batshit insane adventure game ever created. I'm not being hyperbolic about this. This isn't a game, it's a never-ending parade of the worst kind of moon logic you could ever willingly subject yourself to, disguised as an adventure game, and I've been absolutely fascinated with it ever since I stumbled upon a walkthrough for it on a website called thespoiler.com. Just reading the walkthrough of this game is enough to make your eyes glaze over, but playing it is a whole nother level of bizarre. First of all, the art style is definitely something. I mean, taking one look at any of the screens in this game is enough to make you think you just dropped enough acid to make Hunter S. Thompson recoil in horror. The visuals are, for lack of a better word, trippy. Some might call them surreal, but that's if they're being charitable. If you ask me, they've got that sort of baby's first Photoshop collage vibe where you just throw a bunch of weird shit up on screen and fiddle with the transparency on a few layers, but hey, the visuals are the least of your concerns if you decide to play this game. That's just the tip of the iceberg. The premise is deceptively simple enough. A young prince is the heir to a kingdom called Icea, but the little shit doesn't want to be king, as he emphatically tells his father on the first screen of the game.
You will be king.
No!
What this screen doesn't tell you is why they're both floating in a black void with their many, many arms stretched out around a giant eyeball next to a tic-tac-toe grid and 2 alarm clocks, but again, this is the sort of shit you need to get used to seeing when playing this game. Anyway, the little dude's name is actually Edward, but so is his father's, so I shall henceforth refer to him by the moniker of my own choosing to avoid unnecessary confusion, although confusion is predominantly what this game is about. Anyway, Prince Pisshead be thy name, young sir. One of the main reasons for him not wanting to be king is that the Kingdom of Icea is a bit of a dour place. It has very restrictive laws put in place by his father that range from the absurdly pragmatic to the downright insultingly conservative, and the prince is explicitly told at the start that his job is to uphold these ridiculous laws and make daddy proud. And I guess rather than realize that by ascending to the throne and becoming king, he would have all the power in the world to change whatever laws he dislikes by royal decree, he's just decided to sulk instead. So it's up to us to liberate the kingdom of Icea from the oppressive laws of the land and convince Prince Pisshead to accept his rightful place. See, we don't actually play as the prince himself. We don't even play as any sort of defined character. We just sort of float around the castle of Icea and interact with the surroundings, influencing the environment in subtle and often rather confusing ways, which ultimately restores the prince's spirit and gives him the confidence to accept the throne. For some reason. It's never really explained who we are or why we're doing this, but as far as cryptic bullshit goes, any personal identity crisis the player might experience is not a top concern. My best guess is that we're actually playing as this ethereal being who's quite literally named Hope, who seems to float around each of the screens, often in close proximity to the prince. Sometimes she just hovers around like a ghost, sometimes she stands around flickering like a bad TV, and sometimes she appears to be tickling his ass for some reason. There's a manifestation of her on each and every screen in the game, but if you look at her, the game just describes her as she does not exist, her presence is nothing more than a foolish conscience. Now, bear in mind, these are descriptions written by young Pisshead's father, so essentially he's telling his son that there is no hope. Well, that's A+ for good parenting there, dipshit. Anyway, to lift the prince's spirits, we must remind him of all the good things in life, thereby giving him the confidence to stand up to his father and abolish his stupid laws. There are 5 quests to complete in order to accomplish this task. You must remind him of the joy of food, the joy of music, the joy of art, the joy of nature, and the joy of love. Let's tackle one of these as an example so you have some sort of idea of how the game plays. The joy of food is attained by cooking the prince breakfast, and this is a multi-tiered puzzle. If you have a look at the menu on the dinner table, you'll see that it consists of 3 components: toast with jam, smoked eel with cheese sauce, and a cup of tea. Let's just focus on the toast for this example. In the kitchen, you can get a knife and use it to slice a piece of bread. You can also find a book of matches, and you can strike the match on the countertop to light it. This match remains lit wherever you go, which is already a bit odd, but we'll just let that slide. In the drawing room, there's a fireplace with a candle on top. We light the candle using the lit match, then shove some coal in the fireplace and use the candle to light the fire. Why we couldn't just light the fire using the lit match is anyone's guess, but that's the sort of expert puzzle design this game excels at. The fire isn't really strong enough to make toast though, so we need some wind to keep it going. Wind is an actual inventory item in this game, and the way to obtain it, I swear to God this is true, is to collect a fart from this dude who's just morosely staring at the mirror in the lavatory. The lavatory, incidentally, is accessible via a giant pair of butt cheeks floating inexplicably in the music room. No, stick with me, this gets better. To make the dude fart, you have to pick up a pickled onion from the pantry, yes, this is a pantry, and then feed it to him and wait for him to break wind. The moment he does, you have to click the hand icon on his ass to collect the fart. If you're not quick enough, you can just go and get another onion and shove it down his gullet, and you might need to do this a couple of times because his ass is all but shrouded in darkness, and there's no visual clue as to when he's gonna let one rip. You just have to listen for it, so if you're hard of hearing, I guess you can just go fuck yourself. Anyway, with the fart in our possession, somehow, we can now use it to blow air on the fire in the drawing room to get that shit going strong, and then shove the slice of bread into the roaring inferno. And that's how you make toast, ladies and gentlemen. Couldn't be simpler, am I right? Oh, but we're not done yet. Next, you have to make butter and jam for the toast. Making butter is fairly straightforward. You just milk this cow 3 times, or however many times you want, depending on how satisfying you find this process. Collect the milk in a bottle, dump the milk in the butter churner in the kitchen, and then use the knife from before to scoop up the butter. This knife is apparently strong enough to cut bread, but it also doubles as a butter knife, but hey, a knife is a knife, right?
That's a knife.
Slam that shit on the toast in the dining room, and then you can turn your attention to making jam, and this is where shit starts getting complicated. Jam is made from berries, so obviously we're gonna need some berries. There aren't any berries in the kitchen or the pantry, so we need to grow some ourselves, but I mean, how hard can that be? There's a flower bud out in the garden that'll grow a berry for us if we can find a way to let it bloom. Now, ignore the ghostly apparition of Margaret Thatcher inexplicably floating above the house and try to stay focused here. The flower bud is here in the bottom right of the screen, but we need to do some gardening before it'll give up the goods. So, of course, we just pick the sun out of the goddamn sky and use it on the bud to make the flower grow. Flowers need water, so next we fill our bottle with water from the pond and pour it over the flower, which produces a single berry. Now you need 3 berries to make jam, so you have to repeat this process 3 times, but you can only carry 1 berry at a time for some arbitrary fucking reason. So where can you stash the berries you've grown until you're ready? Oh, I don't know. How about this mouse hole in the library? Yeah, that'll do. 3 acts of head-scratching horticulture later, and you finally got 3 ripe berries, possibly covered in mouse poop, that you can then dump into the saucepan in the kitchen. A bit more water from the pond and a salt shaker full of sugar add the final ingredients for the jam, and then you just scoop that shit up and dump it on the toast in the dining room. How do you know you've successfully completed this step? Well, there's no immediate indication that your task is complete other than checking the menu, which, somewhat obtusely, acts as a checklist for how many steps you've completed. Now, congratulations! That's step 1 out of 3 on the breakfast menu done and dusted, and let me tell you, steps 2 and 3 don't ease up on the bazaar, but I won't bother you with the details of those. I think you get the idea. Although I will highlight the fact that the smoked eel portion of the breakfast involves you diving under the pond and catching an eel with a live worm that you have to wave around this dude's nose to get it to wriggle, then smoking the still writhing eel by shoving it up the chimney of the fireplace. Good luck figuring out all this shit, asshole. Now you might be wondering what the incentive for subjecting yourself to this sort of headache-inducing puzzle solving might be, cause Lord knows the temptation to just fucking rage quit will hit you about 5 minutes into playing this game and remain an ever-constant companion throughout the whole experience, even if you're following a step-by-step walkthrough. But that means you'll miss out on all the gloriously demented shit this game has in store for you, like ensnaring a cat who lives in a tuba with a trombone and then using his body to tautly string a cello with. This is peak adventuring, I think we can all agree. But let's table the proposed incentive for suffering through this fever dream of a game for a moment, because that's a rabbit hole that runs very, very deep, and we will get to that in due time. But for now, let's instead focus on the supporting cast of characters. Aside from the prince, you have a small handful of servants milling around the place who all seem to inexplicably teleport around the castle. There's the cook, Mrs. Scraggan, who loves nothing more than hitting the sauce while simultaneously occupying the pantry, the kitchen, and her bedroom. Fun fact, if you slap her across the cheek while she's taking a nap, you can climb down her throat and emerge inside this tiny room with a door that leads up to the attic, where you have to assist the timid spider in catching a fly. The 7th guest has got nothing on this shit. Mrs. Scraggan has a daughter, Pollyanna. Shut up. Her role in this game is to unite with her lover Farty McFartpants here, aka Ollie the stable boy.
Pollyanna. Pollyanna.
And your job is to facilitate this unholy tryst by letting him spy on her with the creepiest smile imaginable while she's masturbating in the bathtub. I'm dead serious.
Wow.
Then pass a series of love letters between the 2 lovebirds, which culminates in them getting busy and freaky in the garden, and thus solving the Joy of Love quest. And then of course there's the currently reigning king, Prince Pisshead's father, but he doesn't actually appear in the game, save for an almost imperceptibly translucent portrait of him looking like a spectral apparition of Phil Collins at the bottom of each law scroll. Each of the rooms in the game has its own law scroll, which outlines one of the demented laws of the kingdom, which I guess are just there to either demoralize or incentivize you to press onwards with the game. The king doesn't actually do anything at all in this game. He doesn't even try to interfere with our quest to openly defy his proud traditions. His only appearance, if you can call it that, is on the first screen of the game, where you can pick the crown off his head and try to place it on the prince's dumb noggin. Once you've completed all the 5 main quests, you can then perform this action again, and this time the prince won't just boomerang the crown back in daddy's face, but actually keep it. And that's how you know you've won the game.
And there was much rejoicing.
Actually, there are several ways you can check your progress throughout the game. In the library, these red books on the table will turn green as you complete each quest, and similarly, a dove will appear in the chimney room for each completed quest. The chimney, incidentally, is also the portal to the Wind Room, an ethereal space that seems to exist beyond the confines of the already confoundingly surreal castle, which exists exclusively for the purpose of letting you know that you can finally breathe a sigh of relief in the knowledge that your arduous suffering at the hands of this game is at an end. Or is it? You'll notice that the game doesn't technically end at this point. You're still able to keep playing, and the reason for that ties back to the aforementioned motivation for even playing this game in the first place. See, while you may have technically won the game at this point, there are in fact two endings to this game. There's the standard ending, which you will have achieved as soon as you gain access to the wind room at the top of the chimney and complete all the 5 quests. It doesn't even have an ending cinematic or even a text box that says, "Congratulations, you've won." Now, just gaining access to this room is all the reward you're gonna get. But there's also the deeper ending, known as the Ultimate Solution, which is only for the truly hardcore. The path that leads to this ending is where the game finally relieves itself of its self-imposed restrictions of what it considers normal adventure game design and truly lets its freak flag fly. And you may wonder, if the main game is so surreal to the point of being impossible to solve, what could possibly possess someone to keep playing, especially since it will soon become abundantly clear that what the game has in store for you next is so far beyond the realm of mortal sanity that it would drive a lesser person to the brink of madness and possibly, in fact very likely, beyond breaking point. Well, money might do it. The original intention behind the Ultimate Solution was to offer a cash prize to whoever submitted the correct answer to the developers first, and to make things trickier, the game doesn't actually acknowledge when or if you have achieved this Ultimate Solution. You just simply have to assume that what you've come up with could potentially construe the correct solution. Now, the exact amount of the cash prize was reportedly a solid mil in British pounds, which when adjusted for inflation would be a little over £2 million in 2025 money, or roughly 2.6 million USD American dollars. With that amount of dosh on the table, the developers had to ensure that people wouldn't just hack the game and find the ultimate solution by cheating. So instead of putting in a "congratulations, you found the secret ending" screen, they did a big brain play and just didn't put one in. On top of that, they also added numerous red herring puzzles to confuse players, as if all of this wasn't already confusing enough, leading them down paths that would ultimately prove to be nothing more than dead ends, such as this parchment of human figures that seem to spell out letters. But if you draw lines from the hands of these figures, you'll find that they simply spell out the word "no," indicating that this is indeed the wrong solution. Now, to add insult to injury, the competition ended up never actually happening for whatever reason, meaning that no one was ever awarded the cash prize, but the ultimate solution was still left in the game. Despite the promise of a sizable cash prize being cancelled, fans of the game, let's just call them fucking masochists, because let's be real here, have actually gone to the trouble of uncovering this ultimate solution anyway, and one of the authors of the game has indeed confirmed it as the genuine solution. I won't go into details about what manner of agonizing hoops these poor souls had to jump through to reach this elusive solution, because it makes my head hurt to even think about it. I tried doing some of the extra shit when I played this game because I wanted to at least be able to show you the coded message that you have to decrypt in order to get the ultimate solution, but I just couldn't hack it. One of the first things you have to do in order to even get that far is to wave an onion under this shit pipe's ear and collect a tear, which you then have to release into a room and watch these little sparkles dance around and form a letter. You then have to click a scythe, which you obtain by stealing the moon out of the sky, don't act like you're surprised at this point, and click it at the beginning and end of each letter. And I got absolutely stumped on this because you have to do this in every room in the game and trace all the letters of the alphabet, and that means going back and shoving an onion in this dude's eye a grand total of 26 times. And this one in the lavatory just would not register for me because you have to be super precise with where you click this rat bastard scythe, and that's where I finally threw in the towel in exasperation. If I'd managed to trace all 26 letters correctly and done a bunch of stuff involving the dates of famous people and these numbers you see on each of the screens, which I won't go into because calling this shit moon logic is like saying the surface of Neptune can get a bit windy. Seriously, go read the walkthrough I linked to in the description, it'll make your fucking head spin. You end up with the word Buzzkirfrep, whatever, which is the code you need to decrypt in order to get the ultimate solution. And I was just like, this ain't worth it. And because I knew that getting this far was only scratching the surface, I honestly ran out of fucks to give. In the end, the solution turns out to just be two simple words. Ice broken. Ice being the German word for ice, and broken as in, well, the broken spirits of the unlucky souls who likely spent countless hours diving into this maddening rabbit hole. What's even more fucked up is that in addition to working out the correct solution, these people even spent time trying to work out the solutions to all the red herring puzzles in the game, and some of those still remain unsolved to this day despite their best efforts, because the original author has even forgotten how to solve them.
What the fuck?
I think it's pretty clear at this point why I think Blue Eyes is not just the most insidiously difficult adventure game of all time, but just plainly the most ludicrously insane game of all time. How the fuck these developers managed to convince Psygnosis, a venerable and respectable publisher of such classics as Lemmings, Wipeout, or even the goddamn Discworld games, which are pretty infamous for their moon logic approach to puzzle design themselves, but nowhere near the levels of weapons-grade insanity that this game has to offer, to put this abominable thing on store shelves in 1995, not to mention agreeing to pony up a cash prize of £1 million British to whatever poor bastard managed to uncover the ultimate solution without losing their goddamn mind in the process, is just fucking wild.
But wait! There's more!
Despite looking like the deranged hallucinatory memory dump of a mental patient, this game boasts some astonishing talent under the hood. The game's narration is provided by stage and screen actor Tom Conti, who has an extensive and illustrious career as a proper fucking actor in stage productions on Broadway and in London, in addition to a string of respectable Hollywood roles, most recently his portrayal of Albert Einstein in Christopher Nolan's movie Oppenheimer.
Ripple gently in evening's light, and drown me in your liquid green. Deeper than the depths of night, this enchanting world to eyes unseen.
Meanwhile, the soundtrack consists of a slew of licensed music tracks from well-known artists like Brian Eno, Tangerine Dream, and Future Sound of London, which is both impressive as all hell, as well as an absolute copyright-flagging nightmare for anyone who tries to stream this game on Twitch or YouTube today. Trust me, I speak from experience. And this wasn't just the first game from fledgling developer Art of Mine Productions, this was the only game they ever made. I don't know what kind of dirt the designers had on the executives at Psygnosis, but it must have been fucking earth-shattering. Every time I think I've reached the bottom of this maddening blast crater of a game, there's one more crevice that just leads further into the abyss. Look, if I haven't already made this abundantly clear, this game is the very definition of a mindfuck, and I challenge any adventure gamer who thinks they're hot shit to play this game without a walkthrough, because I can guarantee you'll either be dead or in need of acute psychiatric care by the time you're halfway through. But even with all that said, this game is really a testament to just how wild and experimental the 90s were. Stuff like this would never see the light of day outside a narrowly confined niche genre these days, and it most certainly would never be attached to any well-known publisher. What really blows my mind about this game is that not only is it batshit insane, but more impressively, someone at Psygnosis looked at this shit and thought it was a great idea to swing a sizable budget at it. I mean, how much do you think it cost to license a fucking Brian Eno song these days, let alone back in the mid-90s? This shit didn't come cheap, and I mean, just fucking look at it. So here I am, sitting with my official boxed copy of the most audaciously weird adventure game ever made, baffled beyond belief that this thing even exists, and well, it's a conversation piece, isn't it? I'm the Space Quest historian. Take care, stay sane, and I'll see you around the Chrono Stream. Bye! You know what time it is, Bessie? Let's go, hey. Let's fucking go. Yeah. Oh, give me that sweet candy, baby. Fucking, let's go, Bessie. Let's go.